Hello, my friends, hello, and welcome once again to stately Vaughan Manor, where Roger and I have returned to talk about the most controversial subject on BookTube. It's not the most controversial subject on BookTube. Actually, it's not that controversial at all, but to some people it is, apparently. Apparently to some people it is. Today, we're going to talk about real reading, real reading, as opposed to the fake reading. Real reading. What is real reading? What do you have to do to really be reading? I mean, really, really. Do do audiobooks do audiobooks count as real reading? Do ebooks count? Do ebooks count on these dreadful electronic devices? Do they count as real reading? Should we even count these as real reading? Of course, books count. Books, paper books. Apparently, to some, the only proper way to read. If you're not doing it this way, well, you're just doing it wrong. So, for most people, I think, that you see on BookTube, there's really no wrong way. For most people, I think it's that way, but not for everyone, apparently. Not for everyone, apparently. And I know this from personal experience because, I don't know, was it a year or two ago? I can't remember. I did a video about audiobooks and kind of what I thought of audiobooks. And most of the comments to that video were like, hey, yeah, audiobooks, cool. But there were some that were like weirdly negative. And recently, the great booktuber Greg over at Another Bibliophile Reads, he did a whole like defense, which, who knew it even needed defending, but he did like a whole defense of audiobooks. And so I thought I would, throw in my 2 cents about what's real and what's not, right? Right, Roger? I'll throw in my 2 cents or 3 cents or whatever it is. So let's talk about these different formats that some people have very strong opinions about. Very strong opinions. And books, it seems, I've never come across anybody who's just like, I mean, I know they exist, but they're like, paper books, oh, they suck. They suck. I hate them. There are some people out there like that, I guess, but we don't hear from them too much on BookTube. But you do get that with audiobooks sometimes. You get a lot of hatred, literal hatred for ebooks and e-readers, which is, it happens. And inevitably, there is somebody out there who is looking down on you and the way you choose to consume a book, So let's talk about audiobooks. First, a lot of people enjoy audiobooks, and the question has come up, is listening to an audiobook, is that reading? No, it's not. It's not reading. Technically, it's not reading. That is true. Listening is different than reading. It's different. So you're listening to the book instead of reading the book. So there is a technical difference. I'm not sure that this difference matters at all. I don't know that it matters at all. And I don't know why anyone really cares about this technical difference. So yeah, some people will say, hey, I read the audiobook, which is impossible. But Some people will say, I read the audiobook. Fine. I don't care if they say that. I get what they're trying to say. I get what they're trying to say. And so that's fine. A technical difference should be meaningless in this case. Now, I have looked into this. There is some scientific research in this area, Roger, about the differences between listening to audiobooks and physically reading a book when it comes to retention and how much you retain when you read a book as opposed to when you listen to a book. And most of the studies seem to show that there is a slight difference. It seems to be slight. If you read a book with your eyes, you can retain the information on the book better than if you listen to it. But I would be skeptical of some of these studies, and this is brought out by some of the people doing these studies, in that listening to a book and reading a book, these are two different things, and they require two different skills, basically. And most people who are readers, they're used to reading. They're used to just reading books as opposed to listening to books. And so it makes sense that you would retain more. Listening, it requires a different skill, a different set of skills to listen to a book. I know this because when I listen to an audiobook, audiobooks so far haven't totally worked for me, because I just, my mind wanders and I end up thinking about other things. And where was I in this book? This happens, and this is because it's not something I'm used to doing. If I listen to more audiobooks than I do, I don't really listen to any. I'm glad they exist, but at the moment, I don't really listen to that many audiobooks. So it makes sense that when I do, I would have some issues focusing. But if I did spend a lot of time listening to audiobooks, I'm pretty certain that my focus and my retention would go way up. We can use Greg of Another Bibliophile Reads as a perfect example. So Greg has been listening to audiobooks for, what has it been, 70 years? I think he mentioned 70 years he's been listening to audiobooks. He's been listening to audiobooks since they had, since they were like wax cylinders. He's been listening for a while. And one thing you might know about Greg, if you watch his channel, is that he is technically retired. One thing you might not know about Greg, and Greg, I hope you don't mind me sharing this, Greg spends most of his time wandering the country, righting wrongs, helping the helpless, and doing good deeds for those in need. This also occasionally requires his skills as a kung fu master. So Greg of Another Bibliophile Reads, he spent years in the Shaolin Temple, and so he's an expert in kung fu. And sometimes in the course of his, doing good deeds for people and helping those in trouble, he has to fight, evil villains. And he will do this using his kung fu skills. Now, Greg is such a great master of martial arts that he can attack and block and jump and do flips and, flying jump kicks and all that jazz. He can do that without even thinking about it. He's so good at it. He's been doing it for so long. He's such a master that, taking on 17 armed opponents with only his fists and his feet, it's nothing to Greg. He does it without even thinking. So often when he's doing his kung fu fighting, he's also listening to audiobooks. And he has no trouble retaining everything he hears when he's busy kung fu fighting. Now, for most of us, listening to an audiobook while we're in combat would be a deadly distraction. We would probably die, but you just need to practice. It just takes practice. And Greg has had this had this practice listening to audiobooks while he does other things, which require, because when you're an adventurer like Greg, if you have to jump the Grand Canyon on your motorcycle for whatever reason, maybe for most of us, if we jumped the Grand Canyon on our motorcycle, we would probably die anyway because we're not Greg. But for most of us, we would probably not be listening to an audiobook while we do that. Greg would, though. And, he would have no problem retaining this information because he has had lots of practice. So for those of us who are doing laundry or the dishes or whatever one does while they listen to audiobooks, if you haven't listened to many of them, these activities might distract you from what you're listening to. But if you practice and you listen to lots of audiobooks, eventually you will develop this skill. It's a skill. And you will retain more. Eventually, I'm pretty sure you will retain as much listening as you do reading. Now, I mentioned this video I did a while back about the audiobooks and what I thought of them. I remember one comment. I got a lot of comments that were like, audiobooks aren't reading. And one of them was, audiobooks, even illiterate people could listen to audiobooks and understand them. You don't even have to know how to read and you listen to audiobooks. That means audiobooks it's not reading, because even illiterate people can listen. This is true. So what? So where does this weird judginess come in? Even if audiobooks just don't work for you. All right, I get it. Audiobooks don't work for you. At the moment, they don't work for me, but maybe someday I'll really get into audiobooks. Who knows? Who cares what other people do? Why do you care? I mean, the words are the same, right? The words are the same in this as they are on an audiobook of The Day of the Triffids, right? Same words. Yes, the narrator is narrating it. Yes, you could say that he has his own interpretation and that might change how you experience the book. So what? It doesn't matter. The words are the same. It's the same book. And if people like audiobooks, so what? Why wouldn't you count them? I don't know. Stop being so judgy, right? This shouldn't even be an issue. It shouldn't be an issue, right? There should be no judgment involved. Now, another issue are e-readers. I don't often hear, and I might never have heard anyone say that reading an e-reader or books off of an e-reader isn't reading. I mean, clearly it's reading. You are reading, but you are reading on a screen. And a lot of people just hate e-readers. They hate them. Right? I mean, these Kindles, they're manufactured by the devil. Kindles aren't manufactured by the devil. They're manufactured by Amazon. Okay, that was a bad example, but there are some e-readers that are not created by the devil. Some of them are not, I'm sure. Anyway, and whenever, I have talked about e-readers, inevitably there will be people who jump on and say, e-readers suck. I could never read ebooks. I only like real books. That would be this. This is a real book. This is a physical book. That's what this is. It's a physical book printed on paper. When you read an electronic file, that file is the book. It's the same thing. The words are the same. I get it that a lot of people don't like these for various reasons. I don't want to look at a screen after I've looked at a screen all day. Okay, that's fair. That's fair. You don't have to. You don't need one of these at all if you don't want. But these are still books. The real books. All 1,000 books I have on this thing, those books are all real. They're not imaginary. They exist. They just exist as electronic files. When you open this thing up, you can read them. Every single one of them. And they're all real. Physical book. It's also a real book, but it's not like this is a real book and the books you read on these are not real. This is just another kind of judginess, right? I get it if you don't like these. You don't have to read these. You don't have to listen to audiobooks. You don't have to. No one's forcing you. But why in the hell do you care what other people do and how other people read? I will get comments down below telling me why I'm wrong. But really, it's just this weird judginess which you sometimes encounter. I don't often encounter it so much from fellow booktubers, sometimes, but not much. A little bit, but not much. I get it. I do see it a lot in comment sections, which I guess shouldn't be a surprise. I mean, they are comment sections, but there are people out there that are just super judgy about how other people read. But then there are people out there super judgy about what other people read, you know? I mean, so what people read? As long as they're reading, that's fine. And if you don't want to ever just read, if you just want to listen to books, that's fine. Who cares? There should be no judgment there, right? I mean, you're still literate. It doesn't make you less. It doesn't make you less so if you just listen. I mean, most people in the United States can read. They just don't. They just don't. Most people just don't read books. So if you're listening to books, that's fine. That's perfectly valid. I'm not sure why it's even an issue. If it's not an issue, I should probably shut up. Okay, guys, we'll catch you next time.